All right, let's dive right into an absolutely incredible literary account today. It's called The Foundation Pit of Kolyma. And this is a story that truly tests the extreme limits of human resilience, especially when that resilience crashes head-on into total bureaucratic absurdity. And to make matters worse, it's all set within the freezing, lethal environment of a Soviet gulag.
So think about this for a second. How do you build a palace of universal happiness out of frozen dirt? It sounds literally impossible, right? Well, that is the exact premise we are unpacking in today's explainer. It's drawn from a narrative about a brutal, totally uncompromising mandate handed down to starving prisoners in the Kolyma taiga, which is easily one of the deadliest places on Earth.
Section 1. The Absurd Decree.
Okay, so picture this massive, deadly disconnect. On one hand, you've got these pristine offices in Magadan pumping out this official mandate, and it demands a palace to accommodate 500 occupants in communal dignity, complete with a hall of victories and a cultural stage. But on the ground, at Camp OLP-14, reality sets in pretty fast. There are zero construction materials supplied, and they are entirely surrounded by the frozen Kolyma taiga.
Minus 52 degrees Celsius. I mean, just let that sink in. That is the exact freezing temperature outside when Camp Commandant Bogomolov receives this order. And here is the real kicker. The document explicitly states that a failure to comply is considered counter-revolutionary economic sabotage. Basically, you build the impossible or you die a traitor. There's no way out.
Section 2. Meet the prisoners.
To really grasp how this all plays out, we've got to look at the people actually tasked with this impossible job. This fragile workforce is made up of brilliant minds who have been stripped down to mere physical units. We have Vashev, a former factory worker punished for unproductive thinking, who's now swinging a crowbar. There's Yegorova, a meteorologist keeping secret temperature records on a scrap of boot leather. Afanasyev, the foreman, is a seasoned construction professional, now forced to engineer an absolute nightmare. Then there's Kozlov, the strong man and former farm chairman. And finally, Platonich, a former state propagandist who is desperately holding on to the delusion of the project.
There's this chilling quote by author Varlam Shalamov that really hits the nail on the head here. He noted, "Work in the camp is a means of destroying prisoners physically and morally." The system isn't designed to produce buildings, you see. The labor is fundamentally meant to end the laborers. Imagine being ordered to build a utopian palace by the very system actively trying to destroy your body. That is the impossible paradox these remaining 309 men faced.
Section 3. Reality versus the document.
So, doing the math here, to build this required palace, they need 400 cubic meters of structural timber, glass, and metal. And what do they actually have sitting in their inventory? 11 mismatched boards, 19 crowbars, and solid frozen dirt. They literally have nothing to build with. This impossible math prompts a super dangerous but highly practical idea from a former theater director named Baranovsky. His idea? Don't build a building, build a fake facade, essentially a theater set 3 meters deep just for the official photographs.
And you know, this brilliant facade idea perfectly captures the absolute madness of the Gulag mindset. There's this secret dictionary compiled by a prisoner named Grossman, and it has an entry for the plan. It states that the document is prior and more real than the work itself. In this bureaucratic nightmare, paper dictates reality. If reality doesn't match the paper, well, the men are adjusted, not the plan. So this facade allows them to file the right paperwork and simply survive.
But of course, things take a turn. As the winter deepens, the temperatures plummet to a completely lethal minus 58.3 degrees. The men are out there chipping away at permafrost with crowbars just to build their fake wall. But then, on day 31, an unannounced regional inspector named Volgov shows up. He sees the hollow, 3-meter-deep fake wall. Surprisingly, he doesn't report them for sabotage, but he does give a chilling ultimatum. He tells them to finish the actual building, whatever it takes before the snow melts. The ruse is officially over.
Section 4. Building from permafrost.
With a fake facade plan out the window, against all odds, Kozlov comes up with a, frankly, genius engineering plan. He completely defies the absurdity of the decree by turning the lethal environment itself into architecture. Check this out. They use crowbars to cut massive blocks of permafrost. Then, they use ice water as mortar, applying it in the literal 4-second window before it freezes solid. They frame the top plate with stripped large tree poles, and for the roof, they pack it with dense thermal snow.
But here's the grim reality of pulling this off. The workforce is just vanishing.
Out of the 309 men who started this ordeal, only 90 men are left in physical categories 1 and 2, which means they are the only ones capable of the sustained, grueling labor required to actually build this thing.
The human toll here is just catastrophic. We're talking 14 men dying in February alone. Dozens more are moved to medical category 3, which in the camps is basically a death sentence. And yet, through all of this freezing, starvation, the work continues to a really haunting sound. Completely unprompted, the men start collectively humming Lenski's aria from the opera Eugene Onegin. It's this wordless, distributed humming echoing across the frozen site. It's a profound act of sheer, stubborn survival against impossible odds.
Section 5. A Palace of Ice.
Incredibly, by early March, the roof actually goes on. A photographer even comes all the way from Moscow to document this genuine architectural marvel. But Yegorova, our meteorologist, she runs the thermal calculations on the structure, and her math reveals a profound tragedy. The ice mortar will melt in the spring thaw. The building will inevitably collapse around April 14th, meaning they sacrificed everything for a building that will exist for merely 3.5 months.
But there's this amazing moment when the thinker, Vashev, steps inside the completed structure. He realizes something super vital. Inside the hall, the temperature is exactly the same as it is outside, but the wind is gone. This wasn't a palace for the state. It had become a temporary monument of human agency. Just the geometry of a room provided the profound psychological boundary of being inside, a boundary they built with their own dying hands.
And right above the entrance, carved deeply into a solid block of frozen permafrost by the theater director, is this devastatingly simple message. We were here.
So that really leaves us with one final provocative question. If this structure was literally doomed from the start to just melt into the spring mud, why did they sacrifice so much to build it so beautifully? Well, because the digging wasn't for the document anymore. The building itself was an act of defying their own erasure. It's a profound reminder for all of us about the desperate, unyielding human need to create something real, even at the absolute edge of endurance. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this leaves you wanting to dive even deeper into this incredible piece of history.